Hello, welcome to ePathshala. I am Pulak Sengupta from Department of Geological Sciences, Jadavpur University. In this module, I will be discussing entropy, Gibbs free energy and Clapeyron equations. This will be completed in 2 lectures. Dear audience, you know that if we look around, we see many things happening. Water falls from a height, rivers make their way to the oceans. Geologically speaking, rocks in the mantle melts producing magmas. Magmas crystallizes forming rocks. Sediments get transformed to metamorphism and so on and so forth. Now the question is, who drives this process? The science that explains all these things happening is known as thermodynamics. Thermodynamics deals with several parameters, of which entropy and Gibbs free energy are 2 most important parameters. In this lecture, I will restrict myself to entropy. In the second lecture, I will take up Gibbs free energy and Clapeyron equation. Here we go. What is entropy? Entropy is the randomness of molecules of atom in a system or in a phase. Now, if I take a real life example, just imagine that a bunch of naughty students are taking classes of very strict teachers. So long the teacher will be in the class, the students are quiet and they are sticking to their position and looking at the teacher as if they are listening to the teachers. Now imagine what happens. The moment the teacher goes out of the class, then you see the situation. It is almost a mess. Some students are jumping, some students are running around and they are changing their position. Exactly similar thing happens in the inorganic world. Let me show you why I am saying so. Suppose this is a hypothetical crystal lattice. What is a crystal lattice? Crystal lattice is the building block of a mineral, just like a brick in a house. This is a hypothetical crystal lattice where we have 2 types of atoms. One is marked with cross, another is circle. These atoms are stuck together by a force what is called bonding. Now don't ever think, in the textbook you will see this picture, but don't ever think that these atoms in the crystal structure are static. Actually all of them are jumping like the naughty kids in the classroom. I show you what. This is jumping like this. It's not only in one direction, in all possible direction. This is also jumping not only in one direction, in all possible direction. Okay. So the entropy measures this randomness of this atom. And this type of randomness is caused by temperature. If you increase the temperature, the randomness will increase, that is, the atom will start jumping more and more. And hence this type of entropy is called thermal entropy. Let us come to this picture. Here you see that atoms not only jumping, but they are also changing their position. So there is another kind of randomness. This is because of the swapping positions of the atom. That's just like the kids who are running around and changing their position in the class. This type of entropy we call configurational entropy, which I mark as SCF. So now our duty would be to calculate configurational entropy as well as thermal entropy. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing, that although this is swapping, it deals with the geometry of the distribution of the elements, but this thing is also triggered by temperature. As the temperature rises, they start swapping among themselves. Now one more thing, that at some extreme point, while jumping, some of the element may just jump from this position to this position, and creating a vacant position, and that is how the vacancies are created in the crystal structures. Now, I will show how the thermal entropy is computed. This is computed from the second law of thermodynamics, which tells that if a system receive dq amount of energy, and because of this energy the entropy of the system increases by ds amount, then dq and ds are related by this equation. In the parlance of thermodynamics, dq is equated to dh, where h is the heat content or enthalpy. Now, when the process is irreversible or spontaneous, that is, the process is moving in one direction, ds is greater than dq by t. In case of reversible process, which is the scenario during equilibrium, ds becomes equals to dq by t. Now, the question is, what is the entropy in isolated system? In isolated system, what happens that the system does not receive any energy from outside, and as a result the dq becomes 0, and obviously this ds becomes greater than equals to 0. What does it mean? It means that thermal entropy in isolated system can always increase, cannot decrease. Now, I have to calculate the value of ds, that is our objective. Now, what we do basically, we express dh, because I can replace dq with dh. I mean, what I do, I express dh in terms of some temperatures. Okay. So, once I get that, I plug that equation to this equation and solve this equation. So, in the next few slides, I will be showing how this is done. Please watch the step very carefully. I begin with a very simple equation of heat. The heat is equals to m into s into T. M stands for mass, S is specific heat, and T is temperature. Now, if I replace S with Cp, Cp is the heat capacity at constant pressure, and if I use m equals to 1, that is the heat for unit mass, I get the relation H equals to Cpt. Now, if I transform it to the form of differential calculus, I mean, do not worry, it is simple. Let us consider that the increase of temperature is very small, and that is expressed with dT. And for that, we have a corresponding increase in heat, which is dH. Now, Cp, as you all know, is related to temperature by a equation known as Mayer-Kelly equation, where A, B, C are constant for a specific substance. Now, if you take this equation and plug in here, I get a differential equation where del H is expressed in terms of temperature and constant only. Now, we can plug this equation to the second law of thermodynamics, and we can solve for that equation to get the value of entropy. So, before going to that, I like to show you how this expression is solved. First, what we do, this is simple integral calculus problem, which you must have studied in your high secondary case. First, what we do, that we take the integration on both sides and then solve the equation for a set of boundary conditions. So, what are the boundary conditions in this equation? At 298 degree Kelvin, let us presume that our enthalpy is H298. And for some unknown temperature, my enthalpy is Ht. Now, I can solve it. How can I solve it? I just put the value of Mayer-Kelly equation here, and then this appears like this. Now, the solution of this thing is very simple. Now, you see the complete solution. Here Ht, which is the enthalpy at any given temperature, is expressed in terms of enthalpy at a specific temperature, and we have constant terms here A, B, C, and we have the term for T. If I put the value of T, then immediately I get the value of Ht provided I know the value of H298. This equation tells that if I know the enthalpy of any substance at any temperature, and if I know the Cp of that equation, I can get the enthalpy of that substance at any temperature. Now, let me go back to the second law of thermodynamics, and we take the case of reversible process. Now, we have these things. Now, this is dH equals to Cp dt, I have already deduced. Let me put it here and rearrange a bit, I get another differential equation, very simple. Now, again I need to solve this equation. What should I do? Take the integration on both sides and then solve it for a boundary condition. Now, I draw your attention to the boundary condition. Now, the lower temperature here is 0. So, if the temperature in Kelvin is 0, that is we are dealing with absolute 0 temperature, and let us presume at that time the thermal entropy is S0. Now, at any temperature, let the thermal entropy be St. Now, the equation after this will appear something, after solution appear something like that. Now, from the the solution of these things are very easy. You just take the Mayer-Kelly equation and put it there and solve it. It is very simple. Now, in the third law of thermodynamics states that the thermal entropy or any substance is 0 at absolute 0 temperature. Since I have used the lower boundary at 0 degree Kelvin, immediately this term goes out. So, this becomes the equation. This is very easy to solve provided I know the Cp function. So, what does this equation tell? That I can calculate the thermal entropy of any substance provided I know the Cp of that substance only. So, the entropy calculated in this way is called thermal entropy. Oh sorry, the entropy which is calculated in this way are called third law entropy. Now, I should tell you how the configurational entropy is computed. Before that, I like to show you this figure. Suppose we have 9 balls, of which 6 balls are blue colored and 3 balls are red colored. If they are arranged in this fashion, we call that they are orderly arranged, because all the red balls are following one direction and on either this or this. Now, they are just like the naughty kids in the class when the teacher is inside the class. The moment the teacher goes out, they start moving, they start swapping their position, and this is the disorder or randomness which we can measure by the term configurational entropy. And let me show you how this is done. Remember that configurational entropy measures that how disordered they are in terms of their swapping positions. This can be calculated by an equation derived by Boltzmann. Here this configuration entropy is equated with this term where k is Boltzmann constant and omega is number of possible arrangements. What does it mean? Suppose you have 20 slots for 20 diverse things. Omega calculates how many ways these 20 objects can arrange themselves in 20 slots. So, this is simply a problem of permutation and combination. Let me take the example of potash-feldspar polymorph and let me tell you or let me show you how the configurational entropy is calculated. Now, the potash-feldspar polymorph has potash-feldspar has 3 polymorphs. One is microcline that crystallizes a triclinic system, then another polymorph is sanidine, which crystallizes in monoclinic system, and then we have another polymorph called orthoclase, where the crystal symmetry varies from monoclinic to triclinic. I will come to this point. Now, look at the formula of potash feldspar, KAlSi3O8. This mineral has 4 tetrahedral sites which are occupied by 3 silicon atom and 1 aluminum atom. So, let us say these are the 4 sites available. In a perfect order structure which is seen in microcline, aluminum will be filling only one particular spot, one particular holes, and rest 3 will be filled up with the silicon atoms. Now, if I use this equation, then what will be the value of omega? The value of omega will be 1. Why it is 1? Because we have only this option, because aluminum will always go to these things. So, the configurational entropy of microcline will be 0. Now, what happens in sanidine? In sanidine, the silicon and aluminum atoms are randomly oriented, they swap their position. How to calculate this thing? Let us consider 1 mole of KAlSi3O8. If 1 mole of KAlSi3O8 is taken, so 1 mole of aluminum will be there and 3 moles of silicon will be there. Let N0 number of atoms of aluminum is present in 1 mole of aluminum. This N0 is obviously the Avogadro's number. So, the number of atoms in 3 moles of silicon will be 3N0. So, how many sites we have, tetrahedral sites we have in sanidine? This 4N0, in which this N0, the number of aluminum, and 3N0 number of silicon atoll will be filling up. Now, if I use this equation again, the K is Boltzmann constant, and what will be the value of omega? Now, we have total sites of 40 and we have 3N0 of Si and N0 of Al, and this is the combinational formula which gives the value of omega. Now, the solution of this equation is done like this: you expand this thing and then use another mathematical operation called Stirling's approximation, and using the Stirling's approximation the equation becomes simple. We have Kn0 and these are all numbers. Now, I told you at the beginning that N0 it is the number of atoms present in a gas in 1 mole, and K is the Boltzmann constant. If you multiply it, it becomes the gas constant. So, it has a value. This is 8.3134. So, if you put the value of R here, these are all numbers and the solution is this. So, for sanidine we have 18.70 joule per Kelvin per mole. For microcline we have 0 configurational entropy. The value configurational entropy of orthoclase lies in between, and that determines what symmetry a given orthoclase will show. If this configurational entropy comes closer to microcline, it will show more triclinic symmetry. Opposite thing happens if its configurational entropy comes closer to sanidine. Now, I mentioned earlier that it is the temperature that helps the swapping, and since the swapping is maximum here, that is the reason why sanidine is found in volcanic rock, and whereas microcline is found in slowly cooled plutonic rock. Orthoclase occurs in a variety of rocks, and from this triclinicity and distribution of aluminum and silicon, we can calculate the cooling rate of the rock. So, what is the total entropy of a substance? It is the sum of thermal entropy as well as configurational entropy. According to the third law of thermodynamics, Thermal entropy of any substance is 0 at absolute 0. Fine, at absolute 0 this part disappears, but this part has a finite value for most of the substance. So, do not ever think that entropy of all the substances become 0 at absolute 0. There are only few substances whose configurational entropy becomes 0 at absolute 0. For these substances, what happens? The entropy, the total entropy becomes 0 at absolute 0. This type of substances are known as perfectly crystalline substance. Now, I want to show you this slide where I will draw a relationship between Gibbs free energy and entropy. The properties of Gibbs free energy will be discussed in the next lecture, but for this lecture, this will be the last segment of my lecture. I like to relate G with S with this equation. So, Gibbs free energy is related to the heat content, which is enthalpy of the system, minus T, which is the temperature in absolute scale, times the entropy. Now, G is inversely related to the stability of a substance. If the G decreases, the stability of that substance increases, because every substance likes to stay in the lowest energy condition. Now, if I reorganize this equation a bit and write it like this becomes the equation of a straight line like y equals to mx plus c, where the gradient is minus s and the intercept is h. Now, minus s means this line has a negative slope in GT field. Okay. And more the value of S, and that means the entropy, the steeper will be the slope. So, with this knowledge, let me address this fundamental observation that solid transforms to liquid and liquid transforms to gas if the temperature increases. Now, let me explain this phenomena with the help of GT diagram. Remember that my equation is this. The gradient is minus S and intercept is H. Now, we have three substances, one is ice which is solid, one is water which is liquid, and another one is vapor. Now, these three substances should have three GT slopes. The steepest slope will be shown by vapor. Why? Because the entropy of vapor will be the highest, that is why they will show the steepest slope. Now, the least steep slope will be shown by solids, because the substance the solids are compact structure and it will not allow its molecule to move around like the vapor. The water lies in between. The molecules in water has more freedom than ice, but less freedom than vapor. Now, look at this diagram. At this point, the solid line and the liquid line meets. Here, the G of both the substances will be the same and the temperature will be T1. Now, this point is lower than the G value of the corresponding vapor at this temperature. It means that at this temperature both ice and water will be stable, but vapor will not be stable. Why they are stable? Because the G of both the substances are same and the G of vapor is more than these two. Now, what is the significance? Here the pressure is constant because G is calculated as a constant temperature or pressure, and here I am changing the value of temperature at a constant pressure. Now, what is the meaning, what is the physical significance of this? The physical significance of this is that if the pressure is held constant, then so long ice and water will be together, the temperature of these two phases will be fixed at T1, no matter how much heat you will be added to the system or will taken out from the system, and this is known as the freezing point of water and melting point of ice. And that is why at a constant pressure water ice system has a constant freezing point or melting point. Now, let us take you to another point. Here the line for water, I mean the liquid, and the line for vapor, they meet, and the meeting point lies below the ice point. So, at this point the temperature is T2 and the G of both the substances, the vapor and liquid, are same. So, both of them will be stable and ice will be unstable. This is called the vaporization temperature or boiling temperature of water, which at fixed pressure will be unique, no matter how much heat you add and no matter how much heat you extract from the system. Now let us take a temperature which is lower than T1. Then what happens? If the temperature is less than T1, the G of solid is the least compared to water and vapor. So, the temperature below T1 only ice will be stabilized, and the temperature above T2 the G of vapor will be the least, and that is why any temperature above T2 only vapor will be stable, and between T1 and T2 water will be stable, and that is the reason why if you heat up ice, then it will first melt and then the water will start boiling once it touches T2, and eventually only the hot vapor will be resulted. And this is how we can use GT diagram to explain many geological situations. For example, rocks melts. Of course, the vaporization of melts is not a very common thing, but for rocks, I mean this part can be used. Suppose a rock melts at this point. Now what happens? So long the melt and the rock will be stable. If the pressure is held constant, the temperature of melting will be held constant, and that is the reason why the melt act as a thermal buffer in geological scenario, and this is how we can explain so many things. Let me now summarize what I have discussed in this lecture. First I define entropy, then I discuss two types of entropy. One is thermal, which is induced by temperature only, and the second one was configurational entropy that deals with the random arrangement and swapping position of the atom. And I also stress that this random arrangement and swapping of the atoms are also triggered by temperature. Then I showed how the thermal entropy is calculated from the second law of thermodynamics. Then I took up the configurational entropy and used Boltzmann equation and showed you how this can be calculated. I took potash feldspar polymorph as an example to demonstrate how the Boltzmann equation can be used and that the configuration entropy can be calculated. Then I establish a relationship between Gibbs free energy and entropy, and then I explained the GT diagram, that is Gibbs free energy and temperature diagram, and explain the phenomena why a solid melts and evaporates due to increase in temperature. Thank you very much. Happy learning.